Hi guys! In this edition of my bookshelf tour, I'm going to be sharing with you my classics shelf. All these books are pretty much ones that I read through my 4 years of college and all my literary classes, so I guess you'll get to see what I read. First in my classics collection is Great Expectations by Charles Dickens. And this is the story about Pip, who through a series of events comes into this great amount of wealth. And so the whole novel is basically about Pip as he goes from being a poor boy to being a very rich man. Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen. And I'm pretty sure most everyone in the world knows what this book is about. But if you don't, it's about Elizabeth Bennet and her family, and how Elizabeth comes in contact with this guy named Mr. Darcy, and it's just basically about her life, and it's basically a social commentary about life in the 19th century between the rich and the poor, and the class divide going on there. The Phantom of the Opera by Gaston Leroux. I got this book after seeing the most recent musical adaptation, the one that had Emmy Rossum and Gerard Butler. So I thought, what the heck, I'll get the book, maybe I'll enjoy it. And to be honest, I really did not like the book that much. I thought it was kind of boring in places and really, really slow. A Room with a View by E.M. Forster. I can't quite remember what this book was about from memory, so I'm going to try to sum up what the back of the book said really quick. It's about a girl named Lucy Honeychurch who goes on a trip to Italy. She meets lots of new people, and it's a lot of, I guess what you could call unsuitable people who don't follow the typical conventions of that time. Frankenstein by Mary Shelley. And this is about a scientist named Victor Frankenstein and him making the monster. And it's about the monster having to deal with this new world and this new life and dealing with the people in it, as well as Victor trying to cope with what he's done. Wuthering Heights by Emily Bronte. Wuthering Heights is honestly not my favorite in the world. I know so many people absolutely love Wuthering Heights, but I just couldn't really get into it. I didn't quite understand it. The characters were just annoying and unlikable, and I know that's kind of the point of the book, but I just didn't quite get it all. And I know a lot of people love the Catherine and Heathcliff romance, and it just kind of upset me and unsettled me. It was kind of a disturbing type of romance. And I'm the type of person who loves Byronic heroes, so that's kind of saying a lot that I didn't like the Catherine and Heathcliff romance. The next 5 books I'm going to be sharing with you, I've actually already kind of summarized and discussed in a previous video. If you want to watch my book to screen where I talked about BBC's Merlin, you can go click that in my book to screen playlist. In that video, I was just talking about all the various Arthurian books that I've collected. So if you want a more detailed analysis or whatever on those books, then go watch that video. So for this bookshelf tour, I'm just going to flash them up instead of talk about them again. So first is Arthurian Romances by Chrétien de Troyes. And I actually have 2 editions of Les Morts d'Arthur by Sir Thomas Malory. The one on the left is the one that's the more Middle English adaptation, I believe. And then the one on the right is the one that's in a much more, I guess what you can say, a more modern prose that's easier to read. The Lancelot Grail Reader, edited by Norris J. Lacey. Sir Gawain, 11 Romances and Tales, edited by Thomas Hahn. Next, I have the Norton Shakespeare, based on the Oxford edition, and it's edited by a bunch of people, it says down there, but this is basically the complete Shakespeare. I had to take a Shakespeare class for my English major, and all English majors were required to take it. So the book we had was this big, huge edition. Can you imagine walking to and from class carrying this big thing? It is heavy. And no, I have not read this entire thing. We only read select plays. And it also has all of his sonnets, which we only read a few of also. I do intend sometime in my life before I die to try and read the other plays that I have not read yet, because I would really love to. Tess of the D'Urbervilles by Thomas Hardy. This is one of my favorite classics. And this is basically about a girl named Tess who comes to realize that her family name is kind of derived from like a wealthy family. And through a series of events, just things in her life start to crumble, and it just really all goes to hell for her. Sense and Sensibility by Jane Austen. This is the story of the Dashwood sisters and their quest for a man and wealth. And that's basically kind of what you can say about Pride and Prejudice too, can't you? And Sense and Sensibility and Pride and Prejudice are actually the only two Jane Austen books I've read. I would really love to go and read the other ones too. Uncle Tom's Cabin by Harriet Beecher Stowe. And this book back in the day was considered a controversial novel. And it's about the slave experience in the South. Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte. This is another of my favorites. This is probably the favorite of all my classic books. And it tells the story of Jane when she's a child all the way up until she becomes an adult, and how she first encounters Mr. Rochester. And it's a coming-of-age novel, really, as Jane learns to accept herself and form her way in life. The Moonstone by Wilkie Collins. This is a Victorian mystery, and I can't remember. I think it's a gem, something having to do with this really exotic gem or stone of some sort that gets stolen, and this investigator has to come and figure out who in the house took the stone. And I really love this. It's really a great page turner and a great mystery, and you never know who the suspect is. It always your opinion constantly changes. You think one moment, is it that guy? Is it that guy? Is it this woman? Is it that woman? Is it that guy? I know I just showed you guys my complete Shakespeare collection, but before I ever even got that huge edition, I actually bought all these other ones. I got The Taming of the Shrew, Macbeth, Hamlet, and then A Midsummer Night's Dream is actually a copy I got for free when I did the play in high school. And if you're curious who I was in the play, I was this fairy named Cobweb. And this was like one of my lines in yellow. The next two books I have are by Herman Wouk, and I got The Winds of War and War and Remembrance. I don't know if these are actually considered classics. I just had them down there on my classics shelf because they were such huge books. They take place during, I believe, World War II, and it's just this big, huge epic about this family and other, just dozens of other characters. It's really huge and epic. And if you really like World War II based stories, I think you would love this so much. It seriously goes through all the different things during the war. You got the war in the Pacific, you got the Holocaust, you got things going on in America, in Europe. Just every aspect of the war is detailed in these two books. Next, I have Les Miserables by Victor Hugo, and this is the story of Jean Valjean, who is imprisoned for an offense, and how he gets out of prison, and how he makes his way in the world and becomes a wealthy man, and how he looks after this girl named Cosette. And then it's also a love story between Cosette and Marius, as well as a story about Javert, the police officer who's after Jean Valjean. Next, I have The Scarlet Letter by Nathaniel Hawthorne, and this tells the story of Hester Prynne, who has a child out of wedlock, and she has to wear a scarlet letter A on her bodice as a sign of adultery. Next, I have 3 Titanic non-fiction books, and I don't really know if these are considered classics anyway, but I have them down on my classic shelf. First, I have A Night to Remember and The Night Lives On by Walter Lord. And then I also have the Titanic disaster hearings, the official transcripts of the 1912 Senate investigation. And it's how the title suggests, it's the disaster hearings from testimony from the survivors. And it's really fascinating, actually, because you can't tell who's kind of looking out for themselves or protecting others, who's lying, who's not. So it's just very interesting kind of hearing tales from the survivors, and sometimes it's very contradictory. Next, I have The Essential Tales and Poems of Edgar Allan Poe. Anyone who knows me, if you've been watching this channel since I started, you already know that I absolutely love Edgar Allan Poe. He is one of my favorite writers when it comes to poetry and the short story. And this edition also has his one novel called The Narrative of Arthur Gordon Pym. And the last thing I will be sharing with you guys is The Complete Sherlock Holmes by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. And at the moment, this is on my currently reading list. I've already read 2 of the novels. I've read A Study in Scarlet and The Sign of the Four. And I've also read a couple of the short story selections, like the memoirs of Sherlock Holmes. I can't remember them all off the top of my head, but I've read quite a few of those. And I don't even think I'm 50% of the way into the book. Look at that. That's just where I'm at right now. If you can see that line right there. So yeah, I got all of that to get through. So that concludes this bookshelf tour. I really hope you enjoyed. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button, the like button, and share. Bye!